Welcome to the Everybody Hates Church podcast. At the intersection of church and culture is all of us. With endless posts, opinions, and information, this podcast is the safe space to decode it all while exploring why everybody hates church. Hello and welcome to this episode of Everybody Hates Church. Shout out to our sponsors, Life and Legacy Counselors, and all of you who make this podcast a place to be, a place to talk about some important concepts around culture and church. I am so excited about this episode. I hope you are too. If you've made it this far into season 1, hopefully we've added some value. Hey, do me a favor, wherever you're consuming this, whether you're on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button, make sure that you leave a comment, even if you don't like it, if you're mad at us, tell us why, because that helps more people find out about Everybody Hates Church and this resource. I am super excited today because I have a good friend of mine, my brother, my friend, fellow pastor, Pastor Michael Fisher. I am so excited. Pastor Fisher is the pastor of Greater Zion Church Family in the beautiful city of Compton, California. He's also the CEO of the Fisher brand, which is a team of branding consultants. And then, of course, he's also a recording artist. Go to iTunes, check out J Kingdom on your iTunes. He's my brother as well. He's one of my best friends, and he is hanging out with us on Everybody Hates Church today. Man, thanks for hanging out with me, bro.
Everybody hates church.
Man, yes, this is...
You can tell how this is about to go.
You hear, bro.
I'm telling y'all better be ready. You can tell how this is getting ready to go. All this energy, it's going to be a good time. I'm excited to be here.
Man, I'm excited that you are here. We're going to have a great conversation about celebrity preacher culture. This episode is Celebrity Preachers Hate Church. We're going to talk about how that culture leans against, positively and negatively, against what healthy church looks like. We're going to get in that conversation in just a moment. But before we do, just because Dion isn't here doesn't mean that we're not going to do Jesus Hates Your Tweets. So I'm going to throw Jesus Hates Your Tweets at Pastor. Yes.
Jesus hates Twitter right now.
Jesus hates Twitter completely.
Right now.
Yes.
Because I don't know who turned Twitter over to
that dude.
Yeah.
And so Jesus Hates Your Tweets is a segment we do where I'm going to throw a tweet out to you. It's a cliche, something that somebody might have heard in church, something that somebody might have put on social media. Okay. I want to know what you think. The question is, does it sound good or is it a sound word? You ready for it?
All right, here we go.
All right. Sound word or sound good. When praises go up, blessings come down. Is that a sound word? That just sound good. Pastor Fisher, give it to us.
Oh man, that's a hard one.
Why is it a hard one?
Because you messing with old Baptist shout points.
We both old Baptists.
That's how you
we
close.
Both been Baptists all our lives.
Yeah, man. when praises go up, they be like, blessing, blessing. All right. Anyway, it sounds good. It sounds good.
Yeah.
It's not a sound word.
No, it's not.
The closest you can get to it maybe is Psalms 22, I think verse 3, where he's he inhabits the praises of his people.
Sure.
So basically, when praises go up, the blessed soar Maybe. But to say when praises go up, blessings come down, there's nothing contextually in the Bible that backs that.
Not necessarily.
I praise them a lot and no blessings.
No blessings came down. Man, we actually throw that out in church a lot, man.
You gonna start the show with people being mad at me? That's how you gonna do?
It's Everybody Hates Church, man.
Do you know how many people are upset right now with that?
No. So the Everybody Hates Church audience, they know what's up, man. We tear down, we mythbusters over here, man.
That's what's up.
So hopefully, if they haven't cut us off by this episode, then they sticking around through this.
Yeah. I'm just telling you flat out. Yeah.
The best I could,
not a good word.
The best I could come up with is the people of Israel marching around the walls of Jericho. Mm-hmm. The seventh day, they march around 7 times.
Okay.
And they blow the horns and they shout loudly.
Yeah.
And the walls fall down.
Right.
The thing about that is, it wasn't the praise that went up.
Right.
that caused the blessing or the walls to come down.
Right.
It was their obedience.
Exactly.
It was their willingness to look in the face of that which did not make any sense at all,
Right.
except that the Lord told them to do it, except that it was an act of obedience
Yeah.
to the Lord to actually do what he said. And when they did fully and completely, including walking around the city, including doing it every day for 7 days, including doing it 7 times, including sending Judah out in front, and then finally in the last move of obedience,
Right.
they sounded the trumpets and they sounded a great noise, and then the walls fell down. It wasn't just the praise, it was
Right.
obedience. The problem with us in church is we want to come to church and praise,
Right.
but we don't want to be obedient throughout the week.
Exactly.
and so it's the praise on Sunday,
Yeah.
but then nothing happens throughout the week because our obedience suffers.
Right. Yeah. So 2 things, obviously. Then when obedience goes up, blessings come down. Maybe. Then that doesn't sound right. And then and then the second piece of it would be that technically, did they praise or did they just shout?
They shout.
You
right.
know, they just made a noise.
They made a noise. Right.
But
it was probably more of a war cry.
Yeah,
than it was
adoration
yeah.
unto God. So,
so
at the end of the day, yeah, it's the sound bite. Sounds good. On Sunday, everyone's going to still shout about it. I'm still going to say it.
We just busted the myth, man. That means you got to stop saying it, man.
It's going to accidentally come out. I just want everyone to know.
So if you had GZ
Been
one
saying
Sunday,
it too long.
it's
I've
in
always
you now.
known.
It's in you now.
When it has happened, I've said to myself, "You know better." But it's just something that you grow up saying. You know, when praises go up, blessings go up. Like, I've got to break that habit.
Like catching it.
Yeah. One day I'm just gonna be like, I'm sorry, guys. Cut. Start over.
Hey everybody, I'm here at Life and Legacy Counselors with my estate attorney, Miss Amy Griffin. Amy, could you tell us why it's so important for us to think generationally about our wealth?
Yes, it's about strategically planning, as the word says, that we are supposed to plan for our children's children. So as we are able to build, we're able to create greatness and opportunity for our children, our community to grow.
Amy is my estate attorney. She has helped me and my family think generationally about not just how much money we make now, but how we make sure that we protect our money and pass our money on to generations. Amy, how can we get in contact with you?
Easily go to our website at yourestateplanningattorney.com or call us at 855-574-8481.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Everybody Hates Church podcast family, and you reach out to Amy today. But isn't that what creates celebrity preacher culture? It's a perfect segue. We've been talking about celebrity preacher culture. This episode is just about celebrity preacher culture and how celebrity preachers really hate church because the way God designed church, having a preacher who is a celebrity flies in the face of he who is supposed to be the famous one.
Right.
In our churches.
Yeah.
It's our job is to make Jesus famous. And so, but today with social media and television and radio and YouTube, it's so easy, I shouldn't say it's easy, it's so common, I'll say common, to build a church culture, to build a brand. You're the branding expert, so you can tell me better. To build a brand, to build a movement around a charismatic figure rather than building that around Jesus. And so we have celebrity preacher culture, and one of the aspects of it is this cliche culture, right?
Yeah. So the problem is that people are thirsty for attention, right? And we give it to them based off of like the little sound bites that you say.
Sure.
And back in the day, like we super old, but back in the day,
You are, I'm not.
You're literally right behind me. Back in the day, your relevance came from your content.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked about that, your consistent content.
Absolutely.
So when you look at some of the legends that have gone on, like Pastor Charles Stanley, you know, this is someone who built
Absolutely.
a reputable, you know, like every time he opened his mouth, the content was solid. It was anchored in the word. It was rich.
Absolutely.
And it happened every time.
Every time you turn it on. You can add to that list. Gilbert E. Patterson.
Exactly.
E.V. Hill.
Yes.
E.K. Bailey. You talk about people who didn't get notoriety because they went viral.
Right.
They got notoriety for being consistently solid.
Right.
Over years, every Sunday.
But that was a byproduct of just the society as a large,
100%.
right? So even back in the day, when you think of artists and singers and actors and all of those things, it was consistent, but they were rich in what they did, right?
Yeah.
So we looked at a Michael Jackson because every time he came out with something, it was a hit. Janet, Whitney, same thing. Somewhere along the line, as a whole, the culture began to shift, and it became whatever sounded good at that moment, and that's what made you popular.
Sure.
And then unfortunately, that seeped into the church.
Absolutely.
And so now we've given birth to pastors and preachers that are chasing after just, I need to say something that's going to grab the attention of the people.
Right.
Even though it is not anchored at all in the word.
But you're right, it happens it's not even so much a shift in the church as much as it's the shift in the church is a microcosm of the shift in the culture.
Exactly.
And because it's not just happening in church, it's happening everywhere where you got, what we used to call one-hit wonders.
Yes.
Right? Where, in hip hop, it's, the people that are famous are not necessarily the people who consistently make good music as much as they did something provocative that got them notoriety and pushed out there. And so it's kind of happening, what's happening in church is not just a church thing. We say it's a generational thing.
Yes.
It's a culture thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem, though, is that we have to remember that we can never be a result of the culture, right? That's the whole premise. That's the whole message is that I call you out from the world.
Yeah.
I put you in the world, not to be of the world.
Right.
But unfortunately, with things like the Stellar Awards, Dove Awards, and you being, awarded for being popular and praised for being popular and cool, I think people have just, they drinking the Kool-Aid.
Somewhere along the lines, that became the goal.
Exactly.
The goal, instead of being faithful, the goal became to be popular. It became to have notoriety. And man, it's hard now to find what we were saying from the previous generations. And the reality is, as we're talking about, is generational. And this is the first generation that had celebrity preachers. There were celebrity preachers in our parents' generation. Dr. King was a celebrity preacher, and if you're putting those similar definitions to it, someone who had a great deal of notoriety, a great deal of influence, somebody who is known both in church circles and outside of church circles, those who who are able to cross industry, etc. And so this isn't the first generation of celebrity preachers. I think the difference really is just realizing that what made a celebrity preacher for our parents is different from what makes a celebrity preacher now. Dr. King became a celebrity preacher, if it's okay to use those terms, because at the time the cultural heroes for baby boomers was influencers in the world, were world changers. And so at the same time that John F. Kennedy and Malcolm X are world changers, so is this preacher out of Atlanta, Dr. King. And so there's this idea even then that there was a celebrity preacherism then, just like there is now. They're just made differently because influencers are made differently for millennials and Gen Z.
I agree. So I think that every generation, they're the ones that define who's going to be the celebrity anything.
Absolutely.
Right? So being a celebrity, being lifted up, and everyone gravitating to you is always defined from the generation. So yes, we have always had celebrity preachers. But I think what's dangerous now is that we're a generation where the preachers believe that they are celebrities. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So I doubt very seriously that Dr. Martin Luther King was walking around believing his own height.
Sure.
Right? Jesus tells us our response when the world starts calling you names and exalting you. I love this part when he says, well, that's what they say.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I'm not in my glory yet, so I can't own that.
Right.
And it was the very thing that the enemy was trying to tempt him with, you know, when he was like, I'll make you, you know, known. I'll give you kingdoms.
Right.
And Jesus was like, I already have that. I'm not here for that right now.
Yeah.
And so I think what makes it dangerous now is that we have a generation of people that are believing the hype. So yes, generations have always hyped up the preacher, but what makes it dangerous is this is a generation that believes the hype.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So it's one thing for you to be preaching content, right? And the people gravitate to you and they're like, man, you're awesome. And then it's dangerous when you start changing the content because you don't want to lose that.
Because you got to hold it.
Yes.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
That's the problem. And I'm glad we're addressing it like that because I'm sure a lot of people are like, you know, well, Jesus was well known and Paul was well known and Peter was well known. I mean, 3,000 people right after Pentecost. Big deal.
Big deal.
But that's not the problem. The problem is when you begin to shift and shape the sermon, the message, you're starting to rewrite the message because you're like, oh, that's not going to get them enough. You're no longer preaching so that you can save souls. You're preaching so that you can maintain your viewership.
And Jesus drew crowds.
Yes.
And then said stuff that made the crowds want to leave.
Exactly.
You know, so he was able to, at the same time, because of the power of his ministry, because of the power of his anointing, because of the effectiveness of his teaching, because of the power of his ability to touch, heal, set free, bless, deliver, there were plenty of people who wanted to be around that. And you could say, if you know, church consultants will say, well, that was a mega church type of an anointing. Sure. And then Jesus would teach.
Yes.
And then crowds would leave, and he'd have to say to his disciples, y'all leaving too?
Right.
There was a both and. Peter preached on the day of Pentecost, and 3,000 got saved. Then as the church grew, it had to be dispersed.
Yep.
And so if we were going to do, if the church was going to do what Jesus told it to do, to go to the ends of the earth, it couldn't create just a mega church right there in Jerusalem and be happy. And so I believe God brought about the persecution necessary to disperse the church. And so, again, it's not even so much about mega church because churches come in all sizes.
Yeah.
It's so important to remember that we can't proof text the Bible to give ourselves permission to take a platform that's reserved for Jesus.
Yeah, and the other thing is that it's natural for people to always, so the word celebrity, if you look it up, it's going to be synonymous with idol. Idolatry. And so it's very important that we don't allow the people to make idols out of who we are, because we're really just messengers, right?
That's real.
And so what ends up happening is we start, instead of telling the people, read your Bible, research this on your own, know this for yourself, we start saying, we're the word.
Yeah.
We say is right. You don't even have to check this because God told it to me.
Right. And I don't think anybody would actually say that. I haven't heard anybody say that out of their mouth, but it is what we create,
It's
though,
what we create.
isn't it? Where unfortunately we have these mega personalities. People flock to them, but then when church is over and the lights are off, can I go back to my Bible and sustain without coming back to what even if I don't believe it, I act as if the only way I can hear from God is through you.
Right. Well, but you know, many times, even when Jesus would speak, and I love this, I mean, because he's the Son of God. He could have always got up and made absolute statements and basically was like, I'm the final order on this. But he would always say what? It is written. I love that. He would either say, it is written, or he would say, the law says.
Yeah, like, you know the law, what is
you
that?
know the law, and then he would proceed.
Right.
In other words, he was basically like, I'm not speaking from my own,
Yeah.
you know, my own thoughts and my own ideas. I'm speaking from what is in the Word. So a lot of times, what I'm hearing in a lot of the pulpits is people saying, you know, I have a thought. you know, or something came to my mind, and, you know, I was thinking, and then they begin to proceed in their own ideology, and they never say, go look at it for yourself. They never, go ahead. I mean, anyone that's watching, go back on some of these messages and listen to how often you do not hear a lot of who we call celebrity preachers saying or challenging their congregation
to lean on the word.
Go find that.
Go lean on the word.
Yeah, go find what I just said.
Yeah.
No, they're leaning on the reaction of the crowd.
Sure.
Ooh,
Yeah.
you know, and they're the kind of like, yeah, you know, I watch a lot of my colleagues. You know, they sit there impressed, like I said that. You know, instead of saying, no, I want to challenge you to go prove that what I said was correct.
And then we fall into the trap of saying something that turns out to be controversial because we were trying to be clever. Like we saw that recently. Like you're listening to a preacher preach, and they said something, and that it's like, I see what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
But
it didn't quite
curl. It didn't curl. It didn't come all the way around, and now you're bordering on heresy. You could have shot straight.
Yeah.
You should to use a basketball analogy, you could have thrown the pass, but you had to throw a behind the back pass because it was cute. And it ended up going into the third row instead of doing what you needed it to do. And now you're on, now what you said has been elevated. Some people eat it, but then other people who are in love with their Bible, in love with theology, will say, why? Like, not even so much what. When I heard what was said, and it was a preacher that said Jesus never reached his potential.
Right.
Jesus reached his purpose.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, I see what you were trying to do there. Yeah. But because it was a behind the back pass, you really could have just said, pursue your purpose, pursue purpose.
Yeah.
Because that's a sound word.
Yeah.
Pursue purpose is a sound word. When you add, the cuteness to it, then it becomes sound good, and now we're venturing into some dangerous territory, and we got to be super careful.
Well, the other piece to it in the celebrity culture, right, is once somebody becomes a celebrity, it's almost as if they can no longer be challenged. So now that may work in the world, right, where you reach a place where we see it all the time. When somebody becomes a celebrity, if you work with a mega producer or whatever, they come in and they be like, man, this is a hit. Yeah. And the whole room is like, yeah. Even on the inside, they're like, this is trash. The whole room is like, this is horrible. But who's going to tell this celebrity?
When it's a Pied Piper, everybody has to fall in line.
So the problem is that same mentality, because the celebrity mentality is in the church.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that comes with it, that we're not creating defenders of the faith. We are creating fans. And so when you have defenders of the faith, then that means that my job is to defend the faith and the truth of the gospel, even from you, Pastor. But if I'm your fan,
I can't.
I'm going to buy your album even though I know this is the worst album I have ever heard come from you. And that is now, I literally as I'm talking right now, Bobby, the chills, like that's the stuff that keeps me up at night, is that the celebrity culture, not so much that we're seeing the idols in the pulpit, we've seen that. Not so much that we're hearing the crazy theology, we've heard it. But that for the first time ever since that I know of, it's the fans in the pews. It's the culture that says, I can't challenge what my pastor just said. Yeah. I'm looking at the Bible and I'm looking at what you just did on that stage, and I'm like, this doesn't match.
It don't match.
And this is what disturbed God when Moses was hanging out with God, and then Moses comes back and is like, God told me you built an idol. Like, Aaron, how'd that happen? How'd that happen?
Yeah.
And he said, the people.
The people.
Like no one in the people said, guys, we shouldn't be building this.
Right.
And that's what makes me scared in this culture.
Absolutely.
Because we live in a time where you can't say anything. Instagram doesn't have a dislike button. Facebook doesn't have a dislike button. Everything is about like what I do or love it. You only have two choices, like it or love it. And that's the most dangerous concept to have in a church. That nobody can come and bring you into a level of accountability.
And it's not just happening in church. It's also happening in social media. And so if something were to happen and, you know, and the shade room gets a hold of it, whatever, then, you know, because one of the reasons for this podcast, I'm addicted to the comment section. And so I'm scrolling through the comments, and what you find is people defending. Exactly. No matter what it is, people defend it. Now, to a degree, I appreciate that. I appreciate, for me as a pastor, if somebody got the wrong idea about me, I appreciate when my members go into the comment section like, nah, y'all, that's not true.
Right.
Hopefully they're like, listen to the whole message or whatever the case may be. Right. They're not defending me blindly. They're saying, no, look at the body of work.
Right.
But what happens is somebody could say something wild, and their fans will be in the comment section refuting any level of, you know, somebody just kind of throwing a flag on a play. And it's like, no, but they, you know, and here's what it is. Look at how many people came.
Right.
Look at how many people are at the church.
Right.
It must be right. God must have his hand on it because look, you know, 30,000 people go to this church. I've just made that up, but whatever the case may be, it's the measurements of blessing that we have chosen to use in order to legitimize or delegitimize someone. And sometimes we got to be honest that anybody can draw a crowd. If I went into the middle of Washington D.C. and set myself on fire, guess what it would do? It would draw a crowd.
Yeah.
Just because we drew a crowd doesn't mean that we did the godly thing. It definitely doesn't necessarily mean that God's hand of blessing is on it. And we just got to be mindful of that we want to draw crowds. It's biblical to draw crowds. It's biblical to preach with effectiveness. It's biblical to touch a community so much so that people are drawn to the generosity and the love of Jesus. And so it's biblical to draw a crowd, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every crowd that is drawn was drawn from in a manner that was biblical, or it doesn't necessarily equate to God's hand of blessing.
Yeah, and you know what I think what creates the whole celebrity, and I could be jumping ahead, but that whole piece of drawing the crowd, I think though is the problem.
Okay.
Because I think that the enemy has perverted that. I think Jesus did not come to draw crowds. He came to bring the kingdom to earth. His message in certain environments drew a crowd.
Yeah.
I think the enemy has now made it less about the message and about exactly what was that, drawing the crowd. And I think that that's what has created this whole culture from the pulpit. I'm obsessed with it being crowded.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with the measurement of our ministry is based off of crowd.
Yes.
If you got 100 people coming, your church is nothing. If you got 30,000 people, God must be using you.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, effectiveness in the kingdom is about how well did you articulate that message. The message is not even designed to always draw the crowd.
The crowd, absolutely.
But it is designed to always create conversion.
Because the gospel is offensive. It's not always going to draw a crowd.
It's not always going to draw the crowd.
And I love what you said. You said that the message in certain environments
there you go
drew a crowd. And so when Jesus is on the side of the mountain and he's healing, he just got finished doing a healing spree, and then all the people are gathered and now he has to feed 5,000 people, it drew a crowd.
Yeah.
When he said peace be still to the winds and the waves, he was in a boat with 12 other dudes.
Yep.
And that was it, right? And so sometimes Jesus draws a crowd. Sometimes it's Jesus and a few people. Sometimes when Jesus draws the crowd, he says something that cuts and people leave because they don't want to be a part of that. And so the crowd is a byproduct. And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It was Jesus the whole time. And Jesus didn't always draw crowds.
And so when you become the person that wants to be a celebrity, the celebrity is built by people. The messenger is called by God. And so when you want to be a celebrity, then that means you're obsessed with keeping the crowd, pleasing the crowd, and doing whatever to not lose your crowd. When you understand that we're called just to be messengers, then we're not obsessed with the crowd and keeping the crowd.
That's real.
We're obsessed with what season is God in, because as pastors and shepherds, you go through seasons where he uses you to draw a crowd, then you go through a season where he uses you to cultivate.
Yeah.
And what's also scaring me, because everyone is so obsessed with keeping the crowd because they don't want to lose their celebrity, is I think we're missing as a whole, and it makes no sense for you and I to celebrate this just as two people. The church as a whole is missing that I think the time has changed, where we have a generation that needs to be cultivated, indoctrinated, challenged. I think the era of the Billy Grahams and all of them, that was a season where it's the fish and bread, I call it. The drawing of the great crowd.
Yeah.
Then we have a generation that has come up us that is more knowledgeable, and that's on purpose, so that we may cultivate them and challenge their lifestyles. But because our pulpits are full of people who are obsessed with celebrity, you're going to forsake the call to cultivate. Because cultivation, you're going to lose that crowd.
It's messy work.
Messy work. You're going to lose the crowd. Some of the fish, they taint it. They're going to fall away. We saw Jesus do that in the very analogy that you used that's found in John 6, verse 66 and 67, where he had fed them fish and bread, I think 2 times up until that point. And he's like, I'm not doing it no more, because guess what I found out? Y'all just coming for the food. Y'all got to come for more than that. And they all leave. And we're with the celebrity that's in the pulpit, that's what they're terrified of. They don't want anyone to leave. And so now, if God is in the season of cultivation, then that means the only messages you're getting, bro, is to cultivate the people.
Right.
So if that's the only way God is speaking, then that means anything else is said outside of that is you making it up.
That's right.
Which is why we now have these pulpiteers that are now saying sound bites to keep the crowd while they're not cultivating the kingdom.
Isn't that part of what's created it, though, is so for instance, in the 50s and 60s, Dr. King was Dr. King because he was a world influencer. He was a world changer. In the 70s, 80s, really 80s, 90s, you got Charles Stanley, Gilbert E. Patterson, Bishop T.D. Jakes, and others who become celebrity preachers because television is the way into people's homes.
Right.
And those who mastered television, Robert Schuller, those who mastered television became the celebrity preachers. Now, in 2020s, with social media is what it is, the same way that those who mastered television in the 80s and 90s became the celebrity preachers, those of us who master social media become the celebrity preachers.
Very
true. The problem is, on television, you got 30 minutes or even an hour.
Right.
On social media, you got 60 seconds, if that.
Right.
And it's going viral. Nobody's tuning in. People are scrolling, and they happen to come across your 60-second, hit, where you're saying something charismatic, you're saying something provocative, you're saying something earth-shaking, whatever the case may be in those 60 seconds. The problem with that is the culture is built now on people who are great at saying it for 60 seconds, but struggle to give you 30 minutes of meat. Right. And so talk to me about what has created celebrity preacher culture, and I really want to ask you, what are there any positives? That we talked about some negatives.
Yeah.
Are there any positives to the celebrity preacher culture as we talk about church?
Yeah. So the first one, what created it, I think we've done a good job of probably covering that for the most part. It's the people. The people will forever need someone to worship. That's just in our nature. It's not our job to tell the people, don't find you an idol. It's our job that when they find us, to not allow them to make us their idol. Sheesh. That's what Paul does when they are thirsty to lift him up. And he says, no, I'm not a God. After he shakes off the snake and they start to be like, he's a God. Paul's like, let's get out of here. Right. He comes later and he says, listen, whether it's me or Apollos, it doesn't matter. Someone plants a seed, another person waters, but it's the Holy Spirit that finishes the work, right? Absolutely. So that's Paul teaching us that in every generation, the people will want an idol. Yeah. All right, so that's done. It's the problem, and what we're talking about, again, what we said earlier, is that we have to make sure that we do not allow them to make us their idols. Okay, so that's that. Which leads me to, I think that there are good to being the celebrity preacher if you don't allow how the people lift you up to change your message.
If we steward it well.
If we steward it well, and you have, and this, using the examples we've heard from the Billy Grahams, the Robert Schulers, G.E. Pattersons, they didn't change that message. They understood that God gave me this platform for however long I have it to speak the truth, right? And that's what Jesus mastered. When he had an audience, he knew I got to speak kingdom, and he didn't waver. And so I think there's good. When you have 22,000 followers on Instagram, you have 100,000, 1 million followers on Instagram, that's not a bad thing, because you have 1 million people that you have the potential to give them truth
point
and
them
to
to
set them
Jesus.
free. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility to steward those audiences well.
Absolutely.
And to let our light so shine. And if it was interpreted in the new hip hop 2023 version, it would be like, use our platform so that when they see us, they glorify him.
Our Father in heaven.
And so we can do that, and we have to ask God to give us the wisdom on how to take a 30-second video and make it so powerful, and, packed with truth, that someone that's scrolling will stop and will give Jesus a try.
And want Jesus, not necessarily want us.
Exactly.
And so that
we have a great platform.
There's and a beautiful benefit is that influence moves people and gets things done.
Exactly.
Influence can point people to Jesus. But then when we create pedestals, that's the danger of it. When we create pedestals, man, the pedestals that we create in our culture, particularly in church culture, man, it is a far fall.
Yeah.
We saw that recently with a pastor in a church in New York who was a celebrity preacher, a pastor to celebrities.
Yeah.
But man, when he fell,
Yeah.
it was a far fall. And so many people, it's not just, when a preacher falls from a pedestal, it's not just the preacher that gets hurt. It's everybody who looked to that person, everybody who relied on that person, everybody who was on the staff of the church that put that person on the pedestal, and now their well-being, their income is attached to the ascent of that person. So many people are affected, and now there are documentaries
unfortunately,
about pastors who fell because that pedestal is high. I heard Bishop Jake say one time that the light is bright and the light is hot.
Yeah. And you have to remember that God was serious when he said, "I'll have no other gods beside me." Like, I don't think he was joking.
Right.
It was like in the first 5 books.
Yeah.
So we know, anything from Genesis to like Deuteronomy is like God like on one.
Right.
And like the whole 5 books is like him just like, you won't do that, you're gonna eat that and die. So that was one. I'll have no idols.
Right.
I mean, he's like huge on that. No idols, to the point where his son repeatedly, low-key, makes it a point to kind of be like, I'm here to do the Father's will.
Right.
It's almost like Jesus is like, yo, I'm not in this.
Right.
Like, I know how you roll. Like, we good.
Yeah.
I don't want them to just worship me.
Right.
I'm doing this for my Father's glory.
So much so that the disciples caught it. The disciples like, all right, we know you're not in your glory now. And then they tried to swing around it.
Yeah.
When you get in your glory, let your boy.
And he was so quick to be like, I asked my dad about that.
Yeah.
I'll tell my pops about that. Like, I don't even know when I'm coming back.
It's not even for you to know. Right.
So my point to that is that it's important that we understand our role. When you thirst to be, or when you become drunk with the platform of celebrity, then you forget your role. So we talked about how you forget the message.
Yeah.
But then we don't talk about how also when you become drunk with the platform of celebrity, you forget your role. And what do I mean by that? So if you start craving the crowd, then you forget that that's not how the church grows. The church grows exactly with the example I use when Paul says one man waters, another man plants. But when you're thirsty for the crowd, you think you're the planter, the waterer, and you're going to reap the harvest. Instead of realizing that you play a role in these people's journey.
It's my job to build the person, not necessarily build the crowd.
There you go.
And as a pastor, if I love Jesus and I want to feed his sheep, as he told Peter, then it begins with building the people. And you don't necessarily build people thousands at a time. most of the time, if you're really doing a good job of building people, you're building people 1 at a time, 10 at a time,
or what
12
about this?
at a time.
Or you don't build the people for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you build the people, and then after that, God shifts them on to maybe
Yeah.
another ministry or somewhere else.
Yeah.
But when we're celebrities, it's all about how many records did I sell. When you are a pastor, it's all about, you know, how many people did I help?
How many people showing up? How many books did I sell? How many,
That's celebrity.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
pastor is about what role am I playing in this person's life
Yeah.
and in his family's life in
Yeah.
their season right now. And then after that, they move on. And so it's going to be important that we use our platforms. You know, when this started happening with me, I remember praying, you know, God, just don't let me fall into the trap
Yes.
of believing my own hype,
Yeah.
you know, and always help me to remember these are your people.
Man, so let's talk about that, bro. Let's talk about let's jump right on in because I'm talking to Michael J.T. Fisher up in here, man. I'm talking to somebody who's very well known in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I'm talking to somebody who has the mayor and the governor in his phone. I'm talking to somebody who is very influential in a global denomination. I'm talking about somebody who is a recording artist, and you have thousands, tens of thousands of followers on Instagram. How do you resist the how do you resist the urge to lean into this celebrity preaching? You were on How Sweet the Sound, your choir did the thing and won How Sweet the Sound, and so with that came quite a bit of notoriety, right? How do you resist that urge?
So let me preface what I'm going to say with, when people ask that question, a lot of folks wait on like this deep answer, like, you know, I just realized I love the Lord. The truth of the matter is that I almost lost everything. I did. When the church started blowing up out of nowhere, I mean, we was at 3-4 services, 3,500 members. We won How Sweet the Sound. We was on every news outlet and all of that good stuff. And I started believing, like, yeah, you know, it's about me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just something in us. And then God allowed me to go through a storm. And he allowed me to see myself, how broken I was, how messed up I was, how sinful I was still.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying, you know what? I'm not using you because you deserve this. I'm not using you because you talented, you gifted, and you all that. I'm using you because your heart for me was to serve me, and you wanted to help my people. Yeah. Now, if that has changed, Michael, then maybe I need to change this assignment. And I remember repenting and telling the Lord, if you give me another chance, if you continue to be compassionate towards me, like David, you know, and show me mercy, we won't have this conversation again. Yeah. And so now, that's what I consistently keep in front of me. This is not about me. The rooms I go in, the people I get to meet, I'm always asking God, what's my assignment here? What's my assignment? Yeah. Instead of looking at who can I connect with to build my name. When Instagram numbers went up to 22,000 followers. Just recently it happened. I had 15,000 followers. I woke up one morning and like my notifications just going off. So that means some influencer took one of my videos and posted it, and then everybody joined. And it jumped from 15 to 22,000, right? And I remember saying to myself, that doesn't mean I've arrived. That means that I have more eyes on me. Yeah. And I need to steward this moment. Yeah. And I need to ask God to give me the words to say, the videos to post that can help somebody that's lost. And so I constantly keep that in front of me because I never want God to ever have to pull my coattail ever again.
That's so good.
That's my answer.
Absolutely.
I'm so scared of disappointing God that I don't have time to pay attention to the crowds of people that may be following me. Yeah. And I think for anyone that's watching and anyone that's listening to this, you know, because we have a generation that's hungry and thirsty for the light.
Absolutely.
But they need to realize that sometimes God does you a favor by not giving you the platform. Man. Because if your heart posture is not right, And if you can't keep yourself grounded, you will mess yourself up by getting on the
100%.
wrong side of God.
You'll mess yourself up by not being prepared. Again, if the light is on, that means more people see you.
Yeah.
That means more people see everything about you. And man, you say, we have that desire. I have been guilty. The Lord has really dealt with my heart on this, because I was the one. So I would get calls like, Bobby, have you heard of this person? Like, no, I haven't. Man, they remind me of you. And I'll look and I'll see somebody who is, much more well known, preaching the same stuff I'm preaching, doing the illustrations the same way I do the illustrations and the illustrated messages and the this and that. And I'd have conversations with God. I'd be like, God, why him and not me?
Yeah.
Why them and not us?
Yeah.
Why that church and not our church? And the Lord settled me in that very thing. He just made it clear, like, first of all, it's not about you and it's not about them.
Right.
It's about me. And if I gave it to you, would you really be able to handle it?
That's good.
Would you what would you do if you were the top story on TMZ for something that you did right now? Bobby, you would crumble.
Man, so get this. So when I was on, and I'll never forget this, and I praised God afterwards because it was a test. I was on a show. I don't think I can name it because I don't want no licensing or whatever.
Right.
But I was on a show, very popular show, and she asked the host. It was other preachers, prominent preachers, and we got into the conversation about salvation. And the host asked, so I know you Christians believe that Jesus is the way. So, and without Jesus, you go to hell. So she said, do you mean to tell me that Muhammad Ali, with all the good work he's done, if he died and did not accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, as you preachers say, he went to hell? 3 other preachers were quiet. I said, this is an easy question to answer. I said, that man blew hell wide open if he died and did not accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. And she said, I don't like your answer. She said, but I have to respect that you didn't change your answer. And I heard the Holy Spirit say unto me, that's why I trusted you at this moment.
That's good.
And that is what we're saying with this show. Is that it's the platform's not the problem.
Yeah.
The people lifting you is not the problem.
Yeah.
It is that you cannot get before the people and on that platform and forget the message that God is trusting you with.
That's good.
You can't allow the lights of celebrity to blind you to the real light behind that light that called you into that light from the beginning. And because of what I went through, because before, Bobby, when I was interviewed on CNN and Hannity and all of that, I was so busy trying not to lose the gig that I changed the answer. That's why God whipped my butt. So when I asked him to do it again, and he did it again, I couldn't let him down. I had to keep the message. And because I did, I made my Father proud. I disappointed the people, but I made my Father proud.
That's good.
And so he trusts me with more opportunities after that.
That's good.
And so that has been, I believe now in this season of my life, the secret of it. I'm like, God, I'm not changing my answer. When they asked Jesus flat out, when he knew it was going to go down, are you saying you are the Messiah? When the Sanhedrin council cornered him, he was like, when he talked about Abraham, he was like, I am. He was like, so I guess it's going.
And they rip their clothes and that's it.
And that's what makes me scared of these celebrity preachers we have now. They know the message. They know what needs to be said. When we hear of examples of people debating about the biggest argument right now in our culture about what people desire, I'll say it that way, they know the message. They know the answer. But because they don't want to lose their connections, they're alternating the message. And what I pray is that in this day and time that people will honor their Father, disappoint the people, and then let the message convert whoever is going to convert.
That's so good. I think the summary Bible verse that we've kind of hit, several times today is it's what you said, is shine your light.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a light.
Yeah.
It's okay to shine that light.
Yeah.
It's okay that light is shone upon you.
Yeah.
But we shine the light so that men would see our good works.
Yeah.
And glorify our Father in heaven. If we can be reflection, that the light shines on us so that we can reflect that light to Him for His glory. That there's nothing wrong with celebrity preacher, the reality of celebrity preachers,
right?
As long as we don't bow to the culture, we bow to Jesus.
That's
and
right.
It's so important for us. And for those of us who are in church or sick of church preachers, or if you've ever said to yourself, you know what, that's why I don't go to church, because preachers like that. I want to encourage you that, first of all, not all preachers are like that.
No.
I want to encourage you that Jesus is on the throne, not that pastor. I want to encourage you that if we do it right, then we can follow Jesus. And we as leaders can say, like Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. If I'm not following Christ, don't follow me. Only in as much as I follow Christ should you follow me. And that's how we resist celebrity preacher culture. And that's how we resist growing to hate church because of church people.
Yeah.
We say everybody hates church. We know everybody doesn't hate church.
Right.
But there are some good reasons why people do. And one of those reasons is we found ourselves following people instead of following Jesus. Pastors are good. Pastors are necessary.
Yes.
A pastor's job, though, is to point us to Jesus. And in as much as our pastors are doing that, every pastor that's listening to me, every pastor that's watching, kudos to you. I am your biggest fan. We are your biggest fans. As you shepherd God's people, no matter how large the crowd is,
right?
As you shepherd God's people and point them to Jesus, I am cheering for you. And I'm encouraging everybody to find yourself a church that points you to Jesus and has a strong, godly, biblical shepherd who recognizes their job to point you to the Master. Pastor Michael Fisher, thank you so much for hanging out with me, man.
You know,
we go kick it and have fun later, but thank you for being on Everybody Hates Church. Thank you for listening to Everybody Hates Church. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this. If you enjoyed it, make sure that you like, comment, and share, and meet us the next time. If you missed any episodes, make sure that you go back, watch them, listen to them, and meet us the next time for the next episode of Everybody Hates Church. I'll see you next time. Peace.